Let's kick a little something for them cars that be bumping.
Yeah, all right, but we need a beat that they can front to. Oh, that'll work. Be funky. You know what I'm saying?
Hello, greetings and hi. This is the Head Speaks Podcast, a proud member of the Headcast Network. I am your host, Aaron Moss, also known as Head. Welcome to Head Speaks, where I'll be talking about comics, movies, and basically anything geeky. Well, without further preamble, let's get the show started.
12 o'clock at night with your windows down. Headlights breaking because your battery's drained. Armor roll on your tires and a big gold chain.
Hey everybody, welcome to the 28th episode of Head Speaks. Today on tap I have lined up a book review. Not so much a book review, as I'm not going to give any spoilers or actually review the book, but I am briefly going to talk about a book. So, let's get started.
Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow.
Who can read on the run and have lots of fun?
Speed reader, speed reader.
Who can do a handstand and read everything on the newsstand?
Speed reader, speed reader. Speed reader.
Who can run forward and back and read everything in the stack?
Speed reader, speed reader, speed reader, speed reader.
And here he comes, Canal!
Head and Head's Bookshelf.
The book I'm going to look at today is called The Fold by Peter Cline. Peter Cline's also, besides this book, he's written a series of books called X-Heroes, which I'm not going to talk about now, but I may talk about later on. It's a series of books that crosses superheroes with zombies. It's a superhero world that's had a zombie apocalypse, if you will, and the heroes are dealing with it. It's a great series of books also, but that's for another show. This time we're talking about The Fold. And I'm going to read just the blurb on it. The folk in Mike Erickson's small New England town would say he's just your average, everyday guy. And that's exactly how Mike likes it. Sure, the life he's chosen isn't much of a challenge to someone with his unique gifts, but he's content with his quiet and peaceful existence. That is, until an old friend presents him with an incredible, irresistible mystery, one that Mike is uniquely qualified to solve. Far out in the California desert, a team of DARPA scientists have invented a device they affectionately call the Albuquerque Door. Using a cryptic computer equation and magnetic fields to fold dimensions, it shrinks distances so that a traveler can travel hundreds of feet with a single step. The invention promises to make mankind's dream of teleportation a reality, and the scientists insist traveling through the door is completely safe. Yet evidence is mounting that this miraculous machine isn't quite what it seems, and that its creators are harboring a dangerous secret. As his investigations draw him deeper into the puzzle, Mike begins to fear there's only one answer that makes sense. And if he's right, it may only be a matter of time before the project destroys everything. Dun dun dun! The Fold. Like I say, it's a really good book. I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't want to give anything away. But I think Peter did a very good job with the characterizations in the book. Mike Erickson, the main character, he starts out the story as a school teacher, a high school teacher. And he's got this wonderful gift, as they refer to, or unique gift. I think it's called an eidetic memory, where he remembers everything he sees, and it's more than just photographic. I mean, anything he looks at or sees, he remembers, and later on he can go back and review it in his head, kind of like a videotape. He can fast forward, rewind, zoom in, zoom out. And the way he describes it, and the way it makes sense to him, the character, is that whenever he wants to review something from his memory, he has a bunch of ants. Not real ants, of course, but mental ants, if you will, that brings pictures and videos. And also, whenever there's a problem that he can't quite solve, or if there's something that's bugging him they can't quite figure out, the ants are scurrying around in his head, and they bring him, snapshots, and it's really interesting the way he thinks about it. And for me, being someone that's completely forgetful, I forget my own name. It wasn't written in my underwear. And I've always been that way. At first, hearing that he's got this kind of memory, I'm like, wow, I wish I had that, because that seems like it'd be a wonderful gift. But as the book, and I will touch upon this briefly, as the book touches upon having a memory where you remember everything can be a bad thing, because if you have any bad events in your life, it can, you can focus on that sometimes when your mind drifts. And I know myself, I've had some bad experiences in my past, some I've talked about in the show, some I haven't. I would hate to have those memories brought back when I'm, if something brings it back for whatever reason, or my mind drifts and starts thinking about it. I would hate to have the memory of my brother, for instance, and the fire and his death. I would hate to have that come rushing back in and be able to view that from different angles. Maybe help me get over it might help if I could, but I won't get into that right now. So as the story starts out, I'm thinking, wow, that'd be a great gift to have. But as Mike, the main character, mentions that, like, whenever he sees dead bodies, if he sees someone in an accident, he's got that etched in his memory forever. And even though he can kind of focus away from it, sometimes that stuff kind of pops up in his memory, just like us. I mean, whenever sometimes you don't want to think about bad things you've seen, but sometimes they just pop up in your head. So imagine that, but having it magnified 100-fold. So while it may be an impressive, unique gift, and at times I may like to have that because it would help me out so I wouldn't be so forgetful, there is a bad side to it, a dark side, if you will. So, but enough about Mike's and his impressive, unique gift. Moving on to the story itself. So Mike's got this eidetic memory, allows to remember anything, total recall, blah, blah, blah. And his buddy says that, I guess he took an IQ test at one time, and he's like the third smartest man in the world or something like that because of this. Which it would, having perfect memory and perfect recall and be able to manipulate events like that in your mind, that would make you a pretty smart fellow. Anything you read, you remember, and that's what he does. But he chooses to use his talent, if you will. He chooses to live his life as a ordinary high school teacher. Meanwhile, his friend Reggie is trying to get him to join his organization, DARPA, because he knows his friend Mike is really smart, but Mike refuses. Finally, Reggie tells him, I've got something I want you to look at. It's when I was on vacation. You spend a month or so looking at a project for me, and I'll pay you a bunch of money. So Eric agrees. He meets up with his buddy Reggie. They meet the guy who's in charge of this, what's called Albuquerque door. And apparently it started out with they were trying to do teleportation. Teleporting from one spot to another. That didn't work out. Things when it would teleport. What have you seen? What was it? I think it was The Fly. His early test, things would, make a mess. Inside out and wrong side out and wrong side in and all that good stuff. So eventually that science, if you will, turned into the Albuquerque door, which is basically a doorway on one end, a doorway on another end, and you can walk through like walking through a door, and you can cross however much distance you need in that heartbeat. So Reggie's group funds this Albuquerque door. And so they're up the Albuquerque door, the guys in charge of it are up for funding again. So he wants his buddy Mike, even though Mike's not technically not that way, he can read things, he can see things with his old organizational skills he has. He can look at things from a different point of view. So he wants him to see, because I forget the guy's name, the guy in charge of the project doesn't have anything written down for security reasons. They don't want anyone to understand the secret how this works until they're ready to fund it, and they're saying that they need more tests. Everything works fine. There's no problems with it. They've gone through the door a bunch of times, but it's not ready yet. They need to do more testing. They need to do more research. And so Reggie and some other backers are getting worried about why do they need so much testing if things are ready? If it's safe, everything's complete, why do they need more time? So they want Mike to take, or not they, but Reggie wants Mike to take a look at the door and see if he can figure out what's going on. So Mike agrees. Again, a little spoiler for the book. Mike agrees, goes out to California, and takes a look at the Albuquerque door. I'm not going to say anything further about the book because I want you to read it. It's a great book. But Mike does figure out what's going on with it. And as the synopsis in the book says, if they don't figure out... I'm trying to think how to phrase it. If they don't figure the Albuquerque door out, it's going to destroy everything. So I'm going to leave it at that. Again, it was a great book. It is by Peter Cline. I definitely recommend reading The Fold. And on that note, we're going to go ahead and stop it right there. And I'm going to play a commercial break. It's only been about 10 minutes since the show started. We're going to play a quick commercial break, and then we'll get on to the gist of the show, where I'll review the 4th issue of The Sword of the Atom. Hold tight, kids. Head Speaks will be back after these important messages.
It's midnight, the podcasting hour. Hello, listeners. It's your friend, PJ Frightful. That's PJ as in podcast jockey, and I'm dropping dreadful new episodes every 2 weeks. When the clock strikes midnight, the podcasting hour shines a candle on the dark corners of DC Comics. Those supernatural sagas of Swamp Thing, Deadman, the Spectre, and more. The podcasting hour. It's a rotating anthology series boasting the terrifying talents of Ryan Daly, Rob Kelly, Paul Hicks, Ben Avery, Doug Zawisza, and other unfortunate souls. Prepare for the unexpected, open a doorway to nightmare, and enter the houses of mystery and secrets. The moon is full, and the dark spirits are rising. For it's midnight, the podcasting hour. Coming this Halloween, part of the Fire and Water Podcast Network. Beware.
Hey, who likes Wild Dog?
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
No. I am taking this podcast seriously. There's no way that song will appear anywhere in the show or even the commercials. I'm doing this right. I'm FKA Jason of the Silver and Gold podcast. On September 17th, 2016, a new show will be appearing on the S&G feed. Wild Pod, a Wild Dog podcast, is a mini-series covering the DC Comics character that is sort of their answer to the Punisher, Wild Dog. I'll be covering the original 4-issue miniseries, the 1989 special, and various other appearances of Wild Dog. Watch for it at sngpod.com or the Silver and Gold feed on iTunes and Stitcher. Vance, why do we even own that CD?
You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Been snooping on the door. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Been snooping on the door. You can wag your tail, but I ain't gonna feed you no more.
And now back to Head Speaks. And now it's time for...
Faster than a speeding bullet.
In the great hall of the Justice League,
Spider-Man and his amazing friends.
the Justice League of America versus the Legion of Doom. This is
What's in Head's Longbox?
Dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind. The world's greatest super friends.
And now for the 4th issue of...
Superhero scientist Ray Palmer, trapped at 6 inches tall in the Amazon rainforest. The Sword of the Atom.
We're back with The Sword of the Atom number 4. Cover date was December of 1983, but the on-sale date was September the 29th of 1983. The cover price for this bad boy was 75 cents. The title was Look Homeward Adam. The writer was Jan Strand, the artist Gil Kane, letterer John Costanza, colorist Thomas Zucco, editor Dick Giordano. The cover was done by Gil Kane. And again, as the entire series, this was reprinted in the Sword of the Atom trade paperback that came out in 2007, which I think I've said before, I'll say it again. It reprinted this 4-issue miniseries and all 3 specials, which I'll be covering soon. So definitely, if you're interested in the story, if you don't have the original issues, go out and buy the trade. It may in fact be available on In Stock Trades, which is instocktrades.com. But enough about that. Let's go ahead and finish up the epic conclusion to our story. The story starts with the Atom thinking of the upcoming battle and of his past, and how before it would have been so easy to telephone himself wherever he wanted to go. As the Atom declares that Ray Palmer is dead, and he's now Atom, he begins to kiss Lewathan. Voss arrives to interrupt them with news that they have caught a spy in their midst. The spy tells the band of rebels that he works for Dagarius, and that he is working to overthrow the king and place himself as ruler. He also says that if Terran was still alive, he would have been killed in the upcoming battle, by his own hand if needed. Being one of Voss's men, Voss said it falls to him to deal with the spy. He offers the spy a poisoned arrow, which the spy shoves through his own hand. Atom tells Voss that they're going to go through with their attack as planned, since they have a way in now. They'll just have to watch each other's back once in the city. Soon the attack commences, and the rebels are joined by the citizens' army of Mordai. Atom and Lewathan head to the arena to find the trainer, Pogar. Meanwhile, Kalak confronts Dagarius about his treachery. He informs Dagarius that Pogar informed the king of all that the Visor had done, so the king freed him to spread the word to the people. Now the people want to bring down both Kalak and Dagarius. As Kalak tells his guards to take Dagarius, Dagarius grabs Kalak and shoves a knife into his back, and then races away. Atom, Lewathan, and Voss get to the king's side as he passes away, with Kalak having just enough time to tell the trio that his former advisor is headed to the power plant to activate the warp drive. As the trio race to the power plant, Voss explains to Atom about the warp drive. Atom realizes that the warp drive uses a white dwarf star, the same thing that gives him his powers, and this is what led him to the Amazon forest. As they get to the power plant, they see the drive has been activated and is going critical. Dagarius comes stumbling out, burning with power, which kills a man that he grabs onto. Before he can kill anyone else, Voss puts an arrow between the madman's eyes. Before anyone can stop him, Atom leaps into the building to find the warp drive is critical and there's no stopping it. As he heads out to warn the townsfolk to run, he realizes he's growing larger due to the radiation he's absorbed. As he reaches the entrance to the power plant, he yells at everyone to leave, but people begin to head to their homes, which is in the town. Atom realizes he must make people flee, so as he continues to grow, he begins destroying buildings, everyone thinking the radiation has driven him mad. Outside the city, Lewathan realizes she shouldn't have left Atom and turns to go back to die at his side. Voss knocks her out with one punch and has one of her men take their queen away. Voss wishes Atom farewell, saying that he did as needed. In delirium, Atom wanders away from the exploding city, passing out to be found later by a couple of men in a boat. Meanwhile, back at her hotel, Jean gets a phone call from Sergeant Louise saying that they found a man that fits Ray's description, but he only refers to himself as Atom. At the hospital, a doctor tells Atom that even if his fantasy of little people were true, he would never be able to find them in the forest. Even after a disaster, the forest has a way of reclaiming its own. Atom tells the doctor that the only name he has is Atom. The doctor tells Atom that there's a woman in the lobby for him. When Atom refuses to see her, the doctor tells Atom that he can tell her himself, as he needs to leave since they need the room for someone that actually needs it. As Atom heads out, he thinks of his tiny queen, and some way he'll find her again. Our story ends with Atom walking into the lobby where Jean is waiting, with her back to him. The end. And that's the end of the Sword of the Atom 4-issue miniseries. Now for my thoughts on it, as I normally do in these cases, we will start with the cover. The cover, it's a good cover. Princess Lewathan looks a little off. Her face is... Again, they're so small, I think part of the problem. Not a lot of detail to her face. I mean, it's kind of hard to make out. Other than that, like I say, it shows Atom, Lewathan, Leviathan on a frog, leaping in. 3 guards are rushing up, maybe 4. There's a sphere coming from off panel. Is running up to him. Adam looks like he's knocking out one of them. Looks like there's a shadow on his sword. It could be blood. It could be a shadow of something. I'm assuming it's blood. His arm, I mean, look, just a brief glance, I really enjoy this cover. If you're examining it for critic purposes, if you will, his arm looks a little off. I don't know. I mean, he's got his arm and he's swinging it, this guy, it looks like. But either the sword's not quite right or his arm's not quite right. Again, I'm not an artist, so I don't know. Maybe I'm just mistaken on that. But his arm looks a little off if I'm critiquing it. But overall, again, it's another enjoyable cover. I've enjoyed all these covers for this series. Again, I wasn't buying comics back in '83. If I was, being a fan of the Atom, I would have picked this up. Hopefully by this cover, I think this would have made me pick it up too. Mostly because of the Atom. Again, I'm not a big sword and sorcery guy. I enjoyed the original Conan the Barbarian with Arnold. But, I don't know. I mean, I like sword and sorcery to an extent, but I'm not a huge fan of it. So, the Atom on here, being on the cover, would definitely have sold me on this, though. So, we're moving on to the inside of the story. Again, it starts out with Adam standing with his sword in his hand, looking at Mordelay. Like I said in the synopsis, he's thinking back. And again, it's just his thought balloons with him thinking that, Mordelay, it holds even the jungle at bay. And here I am with a handful of archers and swordsmen, supposed to topple a king. Life was a lot simpler when I could just telephone myself wherever I wanted to go. And for those that aren't familiar with the Atom back before he came out to where he's at now, his big thing is when he wanted to travel somewhere, he would call wherever he wanted to go and shrink himself down to microscopic size and ride the telephone waves, or wires. I don't know if that'd actually be possible, but that's what he used to do it. With cell phones, it might make it even harder, but we'll find that out here in the upcoming months. We'll get that later, though. Again, I mean, not much to say about these first couple pages. It's good artwork. It's the same. It's Gil Kane. If you like Gil Kane, I think you'd like this. Gil Kane's one of those that some people really love, some people really hate. Some people like some of his older stuff, his newer stuff. I say newer stuff. This time frame, wasn't a big fan of. Myself, I'm in the middle on Gil Kane. Some of his artwork is really good. Some of it is decent. But like I've said before here, I know I've said over my Task Force X podcast, he's done some of the covers for Checkmate. Gil Kane does have a distinctive style, so you can tell when it's Gil Kane drawing usually. And then we get into the page 3, we find out who the traitor is. Just some nameless, faceless guard or rebel. Again, I know originally, early on, I said I didn't trust Voss. He seemed very shaky to me. I'm glad to see again, it's been 20 some odd years since I read this book, so I'm glad to see that I was proven wrong and that it wasn't Voss. He's turned out to be a pretty good guy. Just some of his beginning dealings and comments to Leviathan just kind of turned me a little wrong. So I think that's a lot of where I think he maybe the spy was coming from. That, and I could see a writer doing that. A prominent member of the cast turned out to be a spy. You see that all the time. So that's kind of where my head was at. I'm glad to see that they proved me wrong and that it wasn't. The coloring in this book is good for the most part. There's some that I don't know if it's just my copy that I'm reading. And it may just be the coloring choices. On some pages, the tribesman looks more yellow. On this one page here, page 3 at the bottom, on one panel, we're pulled back a little bit, and the main prominent ones are looking at is yellow. And then we move over to the next panel, and we got Adam with one of the guy that they're talking to, the spy, and it's still kind of a yellow, but it's I don't know, it's like a dingier yellow, or a dingy white almost. So I think it may just be the coloring on it. I think they're supposed to be more of a yellow, so I think it's just the way the coloring came out. I don't know if it's the way he was miscolored or if it's just the way the printing process went out. I know when you try to print something, not from personal experience, but from stories I've read, I know sometimes when you go to print, things don't come out quite right. I've heard stories about the Incredible Hulk originally. He started out gray, but the printing didn't come out very good, so that's why they changed him to green. But that's another story entirely for another podcast. Moving on with this one. Again, this is very much of a warrior society. Voss, again, is in charge of the archers, and the spy was one of the archers, so Voss took upon himself, and he tells it's very formal, Bikus. And that's the spy's name is Bikus. I forgot about that. Bikus, you choose the path of spy and traitor. You knew the penalty if you were caught. Do you accept the judgment against you? And Bikus is like, I accept the judgment. So Voss is like, the arrow tip is poisoned. Your death will be painful, but quick. Though your life has been marred by deceit, your death may still be honorable. I'll offer you atonement. You know what you must do. And dude just shoves his hand onto the arrow, blood splurting out. Again, very honorable. I mean, he realized he was caught. I mean, most people would have denied it or would have fought back. Bikus, B-I-K-U-S. He accepts his fate. He realizes that he screwed up, and he's willing to accept what he did, and he's willing to accept the punishment for it. So he just jabs his hand onto the spear. And again, here on the bottom of page 4, the look on his face, you can tell he's in pain. You can tell that, it probably hurts like a mofo. Not only shoving your hand on a spear, but from the way Voss talks, the poison on it is painful also. So, I mean, if it was me, I don't know if I could choose to shove my hand on a spear to make up for something like that. But then again, I'm not a warrior in a warrior society, so who knows? Then after a couple pages of ads, we got an ad here for Saturday morning TV. It starts December 10th. Kids love Saturdays on ABCs. There's an ad with Scooby-Doo, The Little Rascals, Richie Rich Show, Monchi Cheese, Pac-Man, Rubik the Amazing Cube, The Littles, Puppies for Their Adventures, and the new Scooby and Scrappy-Doo. Plus a little bird at the bottom that says Menudo is on, which was a Hispanic boy band group at the time. I remember these shows. I used to love The Littles. Even though I was 13, going on 14 when this came out, I've always liked things younger than what's skewed for, I guess, but also enjoyed Pac-Man. Anyways, moving off the issue. So Bikus, whatever, shoves his hand on the arrow, as I said, and we got blood coming off as he pulls away. And so again, it's just like it's a warrior culture. I'm not quite sure. I think they seem to be more technologically advanced when they originally came to Earth, but at this point they're more warrior band, if you will. And so they deal things like a warrior. And so, like I said, Voss asks, Adam, what do they do? They're not going to know friend from foe when they get inside. And he's like, well, since they're going to let us in, we might as well go in and we'll just watch each other's back. That's all we can really do. And so for the next couple of pages, we have the battle for Morlade. And as they're in fighting, they get a group, as I said, they call themselves the, the Citizens Army of Morlade, who's joining in the battle on Adam's side and the rebels. And like I said, I covered most of this in the synopsis. I do like here on the bottom of page 8 when Kalak calls Daenerys up before him, and he's like, so you dare stand before me and protest your innocence even now, Daenerys? Admit it. Admit defeat. Your plan to undermine the rule has succeeded, but you too will be a victim of my fall. And Daenerys like, I don't understand. It's the rebels. I didn't do anything. And the king's like, you think you're safe? Listen, they're calling for your head too, you idiots. And we find out that the trainer has told Kalak that Daenerys, what his plans are, what he's doing. And so the king freed him, as I said, so he could tell everybody as to what's going on. So Again, the king's not a great king anyways, but he's not as bad as the people think. So now the people are mad at both the king and Daenerys. And like I said, the king here is, he says on page, 10, it's too late to save myself. I've made my own mistakes, and things have gone too far. But at least I'll be able to see you go down beside me. Guards, take him away. And he does a stupid mistake of turning his back on someone that he's threatening to have taken into custody. And Daenerys pulls a knife from his sleeve, as most cowards do, and stabs him in the back. Literally, he stabs him, and figuratively, by planning the whole revolt. So I think it's kind of... I mean, he grabs him. He could have stabbed him in the side. He could have took his hand and stabbed him in the chest or the gut. Could have sliced his neck. I don't know if this was what Jan Strand intended. The metaphor of Daenerys was Calic's advisor, right-hand man, if you will. And he basically stabbed him in the back by setting people against him. And then he actually does stab him in the back. So I like... And maybe it's just me looking into it too much, but there is that subtext there. I like that, he stabbed him in the back twice, basically. And he drops the king and runs away. And the guards have the king as Adam, Voss, and Lewiathan runs up to him. And just like in most fiction, the guy that's dying he stays alive long enough to spread the word, or either leave the last cryptic comment, tell his loved one he loves them, whatever it is. Here he just, he says, Lewiathan, thank heaven you come. If I die without seeing you, but no, there's no time for. So he starts off saying, to tell her he loves her and pass on whatever last minute fatherly advice. But he realizes what he needs to do, and so he warns him that Daenerys is crazy with anger, and he's headed to the power plant to activate the star drive. And again, there's no time for her to mourn, as they have to get to the power plant and stop Daenerys from killing everybody. And this is where we get Ray figures out that the star drive is powered by a white dwarf star, and that's what led him to this place. And that if it does go, it could blow, as he says here, if we don't stop him, Daenerys could blow the city to dust. And here at the bottom of page 12, they get up there, and we see Adam and Voss looking towards the power plant, and it's glowing with power. And then we see Daenerys come stumbling out, still the same power. And he's insane at this point. He got a little blood, looks like maybe coming out the side of his mouth. And, he's like, I am your king. He looks almost like a zombie. And he grabs somebody, and this guy just dies from the radiation. Before I go on with this story, I'm going to make another little quick break here and talk about another ad that pops up right before this, in between as Daenerys comes out before he kills the first guy. We had an ad for NBC Saturday mornings, which starts September the 17th, a week later. And here we got the Flintstone Funnies, Shirt Tail, Smurfs, Alvin the Chipmunks. Mr. T had his own cartoon back then. I'm sure the younger listeners don't know who Mr. T is. You go watch the A-Team, the old TV series. He had his own cartoon. Then there was also Amazing Spider-Man and the Incredible Hulk. This was the Spider-Man and his amazing friends, which was Spidey, Iceman, and Firestar, which I believe was made up for the show, and they later introduced in the comics. They would have an episode of that, and then they would have an episode of the Incredible Hulk cartoon. I loved this show when it was on. And then there was Thunder the Barbarian, which I enjoyed. But out of all these shows, I really loved The Amazing Spider-Man and The Incredible Hulk. The Flintstone Funnies, I liked the older Flintstones. Smurfs I'd watch occasionally, Alvin the Chipmunks, Mr. T, and Thunder the Barbarian I would watch occasionally. But yeah, I used to love The Amazing Spider-Man, The Incredible Hulk show. But back to the actual comic. That's Marvel, this is DC. Let's get back to this. And then, so Calic's stumbling out, he accidentally kills somebody, and then we see an arrow just flopping through his head, blood gushing out the front, the back, out of his eyes. Radiation is still pouring off of Calic. It's a great panel here on page 13, midway down, when Calic's getting an arrow to the head, right between the eyes. And like Voss is just like, I should have done that years ago. And Adam's thinking, I never even saw Voss draw his bow. So Voss is the Green Arrow, the Hawkeye of Morley. He's the archer that's very good. Like I say, Adam didn't even see him draw the bow. He killed him so quick. And so Adam jumps into the building, and since he is a scientist, he knows about this device. And he starts looking at it and realizes that there's nothing he can do. It's gone critical. Radiation's gone too far. It's going to blow up. And as he starts running back, he's thinking that he needs everyone to get out of town. They need to turn their backs on civilization, return to the jungle. He only has minutes to do it. And again, since the atom is powered by, he's had small doses of white dwarf star throughout his body over the years, changing back and forth from the atom to Ray Palmer. I think that's why this didn't affect him, whereas DeJaris went insane and was radioactive. Ray may be a little radioactive too at this point. I'm not quite sure. I mean, he looks like as he's growing, he's glowing with power also. He just doesn't touch anybody. But instead of killing him, since he's used the white dwarf star to change his size over the years so much, I think it's making him shrink or grow back to his normal size. And also, maybe the other reason, it may just be since he's shrunk down right now, this energy that's being released is causing him to grow back to his normal size. Now that I think more about it. And again, I like this to get people to leave. He's got to start stomping around, and he's destroying buildings. And Voss convinces Loitha to leave him, and she leaves. She's like, "Goodbye, Adam. I love you." And as the people flee, she gets outside, and we see an outside shot here on page 17. Another great image. We see people leaving the city, and Adam, he's towering above the town at this point, tearing the roofs off building. We see the energy glowing out of him still. And Loitha says, she's going back. She needs to die with him. And Voss just punches her again. Just punches her, knocks her out with one punch. And he tells one of the guys to take care of her. That's a queen he holds in their arms. And again, so Voss started off very confrontational with Ray. Now here, where he thinks Ray's going to die, he's much more. He realizes Ray's a warrior, and he honors him as he leaves Ray to die. And Ray stumbles out, and it says that he's got his thoughts, and he's going a little insane, if you will. He's a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, because as he's going, the star drive's going to explode. All you think about is getting away. And it says here in the caption that he's not conscious of the time or the distance. He's only aware of the devastating explosion from the jungle behind him. And here on the bottom of page 19, we've just got one issue question. He's been growing. The suit's growing with him. At no point during this does the suit appear to be ripped anywhere. Even after the explosion, his suit looks whole. He passes out by the water. And here on the bottom of page 19, it looks like he has no shirt on. He doesn't have his mask on. I don't know how far down, because it just shows from his body, his upper body and head and arms laying here by the water's edge. Like I say, one panel he's got his costume on. The next panel he appears nude. I'm not quite sure what happened to his costume between panels. That'd be quite. I don't know if that was something that Jan Strand wrote in the notes, or if Gil Kane made a mistake on that. I mean, they're right next to. It's not like it's a different page even. It's two panels right next to each other. And there's no reference here to anything about his clothes disappearing or getting ripped or anything. So, again, it's not a deal breaker. It's still a great issue, a great series. It's just again, whenever you have a series this great, you've got to pick what nitpicks you can, and that's all this is, just a minor nitpick about the change from this one panel where he's fully clothed to the next panel where he appears naked. And then we cut back to the hotel room in Manaus, Brazil, where Jean Grey's sleeping. The phone rings, and we get Sergeant Louise. She spoke to him earlier about her husband. And she said a man answering her his description has appeared in the jungle 2 days ago. He was in the hospital. And she's like, well, doesn't have a name for this man? And Sergeant Louise is like, he has not complete control of his senses. Not unusual concerning his physical condition, and he can no identification. He refers to himself only as Atom. And then we see the doctor talking with Adam or Ray, whatever you want to refer to him. And the doctor, so apparently Adam's told him about the city of little people. He wants to try to find them, and the doctor's telling him basically, in the Amazon jungle, you ain't finding. And Ray, being Ray, as hard-headed as he is like, I can't accept that. There must be a way. And to interrupt the story again one more time, there's another ad here. There's the two ads on one page. One for Grit. I never sold that. I've sold some other stuff, some magazine stuff, and below that there's a ad for a space-age computer memory calculator, only $3.95. It turns itself off if you forget. And again, so I mean, a space-age calculator, $3.95. I mean, they have these on phones, watches, everything nowadays. So again, and plus there is shipping and handling of $1.50 for each for the first calculator. 50 cents for each additional one. Again, it doesn't really tell you much about it. It's great for everyone. Hey, I just find it funny they got a calculator here in this comic for a space-age computer memory calculator. The calculator that switches it off by itself if you forget, for $3.95. Again, I just wanted to throw that out. I think you do black, wine, blue, brown, or gray is the colors they had. Again, it was a great. I don't know, just I find that funny. But back to the story, the doctor's saying, without some sort of clue, maybe a way to retrace your steps. If you told me your real name, and Ray's like, I told you, my name is Adam, just Adam. It's all the name I need. He's like, well, if you're not going to cooperate, there's nothing I can do for you. And he's like, well, there's someone in the waiting room there's someone in the lobby waiting for you. And he says, it's a woman, very pretty one, I might add. She thinks she might be your husband. Is there a Mrs. Adam? And at this point, I mean, Ray's claiming amnesia. All he remembers is his name Adam. That he was in the jungle with these people. But at this point, his thoughts tell us that he's lying. Because he's like, Gene, as soon as the guy says, maybe it's a Mrs. Adam, he's like, Gene, but how could she? He's like, no, send her away. Tell her I refuse to see anyone. The doctor's like, you're leaving now. You tell your damn self, because we need this bed for someone that actually needs it. But again, like I say, so as it says here on page 21, he's telling the doctor that he has amnesia. He can't remember anything except for his name is Adam. And I'm saying he's lying to the doctor that he can't. I don't think actually. I think I read too much into this, or added things that's not here. He doesn't say he doesn't remember anything else. He just tells him that my name's Adam. That's all the name I need. So it's not that he has amnesia. He try to make him thinks he does. He's just that's all the name he's going by. So at first I thought Adam was kind of lying to the doctor and making him think he has amnesia. But I think it's just he's lying to him by not giving him information. So. Which makes Adam not quite such a bad person. I mean, he's lying to the doctor. And again, it's not a horrible thing, but lying to the doctor's a different story than just not telling him everything. So, yeah, so he tells, as you said, you can leave. She's waiting downstairs. You get dressed now, Adam. And he gets up and leaves. And this almost looks like a final page to me. Here on page 22, I thought maybe this was the final page. As he's getting dressed, he says, well, maybe it's not Jean. Maybe it's some other woman looking for her husband. But if it is, what can I say? It won't sound like the ravings of a madman. Why'd she come looking for me? Why couldn't she leave well enough alone? And he stands there, as he's dressed in normal clothes, which I'm not sure if I guess the hospital gave to him. Because again, I mean, he didn't have any clothes to begin with. He was wearing the Adam costume that mysteriously disappeared just a page or two ago. So I don't know where these clothes came from. I guess maybe the hospital had extra clothes. But he's in these clothes that the hospital gave him, I guess. And he's, looking kind of in the sky, kind of a heroic pose saying, I'll find you, Lathan. I have some things to do first, but I promise you, I'll be back. And I'll find you. We'll have life together. And then right above him, we see Oyoth and Voss standing in the jungle. It's like a memory. And As our buddy Shag would say, she is hot for a miniature yellow-skinned, red-haired woman. But moving on, with that vow on his lips, Ray Adam Palmer steps into the corridor. It is cool and stable in the hallway, unsettling so, and the floor is hard and unforgiving beneath his feet. So again, he goes from a very heroic, I will find you, my love, to the next panel where he's got his hands in his pocket, getting ready to walk out, waiting for the elevator. And here at the top of page 23, the actual last page of the story, and I guess it's there too, it's just not as prominent. In fact, now that I'm looking back the last couple of pages, I didn't notice this before. Most of the pages, most of the pictures of Adam, there's a couple that's not, but you can see where he's been wearing his mask. I think the image is reversed there, but there are scenes where the band about it right below his hair and his lower mask mouth that's not open. And I guess that would be right, because, yeah. So it's red where this, he's been out in the sun. You can see the outline of where his mask was at. I never really caught that before now, but looking in here at the top of page 23 is where I caught it. I thought it was just like a overlay of where his mask would be at, just to show that he's the Atom, but it's on the next panel and most of these other panels before this. I mean, there's a couple of panels where he's further away and you can't really see it. But the close-up panels are... I like... You know what? After 20, 30 years of reading this, I just now noticed that. That's really... That's interesting. That's really... That's very important. I don't know if Gil Kane put that on there or if Jan Strand put it in the notes to include that. But that's very, It's only been a couple of days. He's wore the mask for most of his time away. So I do like the fact that he's got the tan lines and his face... where the mask wasn't covering is redder than the rest of his face. I know it's just a small little thing, but those little details, like I say, it's odd. I never noticed this before. But now that I'm noticing it, I can't unsee it. That's really interesting. And then, as I said, he walks out into the hall, and Jean's standing with her back to him, dressed all in pink, and he's standing there in the background, his head down. And it ends with the story saying, and much to resolve. Oh, he said he's going to go back and find Leviathan. He's got business to tend to, a plan to make, expedition to organize, and much to resolve with the woman who waits for him in the lobby. A woman he has loved, a beautiful dark-haired stranger named Jean. And that's where our story ends. And then we get our letter column. In the letter column, we get some of the old standbys. We have the Purple Pickle, who was a letter hack at this time. I guess it was everyone. So that's the only one I recognize in here is the Purple Pickle. There's a couple other people written letters in. But, and then finally there's a Meanwhile column by Dick Giordano. And someone's asking about the price of comics and how they've raised up. And again, this is always an ongoing concern, but he's complaining the titles range anywhere from 25 cents all up to a appalling $5.95 for a graphic novel. They're $3.99 now for most books. Some of the bigger books are $4.95. What a difference 30 years makes. And he says, over the summer, most comics are going up to 60 cents. And then they're going up to 75 cents. And this is shocking. Only a few years the comics are hiked up to 60 cents. With raising the prices to 75-cent specials, up to $1 or more. So again, he's asking about, why is this price hike? There's ways to keep the money down. You guys can purchase your own paper company or a printing company. And so Dick goes into, and again, this very letter, very comment, the answer here can be taken out from then and put into 2016. I'm sure people complain about the price increases. And Dick says, comic books haven't gone up in the last couple of years, despite inflation going up. When the cost of producing a product or delivery or service comes so close to the money received, you either got to raise the price of the product lower the cost of producing the comic, or discontinue, which means go out of business. He's like, let's look at these options. Option 3, would you or other readers' interest best be served by discontinuing publishing of comics? In other words, would you like it if we went out of business? I think not. Option 2, not within our control. Inflation has driven up the cost of goods. The cost of paper is something they can't control, and so forth. And he says, on the average, you know that DC Comics only receives about 25 cents on the average of each 60 cents you spend for a comic. And that has to split between the, the rest of that split between the wholesaler, distributor, the retailer. And that 25 cents has to pay for the writer, the artist, the letterist, the colorist, editor, production staff, sales and promotion staff, engraver, paper supplier, printer, office staff, and shippers. So that's like a penny a piece. And that leaves about 13 cents for DC Comics out of each comic for profit. And he says that buying their own paper mills or printing plants would cost more in the short term, as it would cost millions of dollars, and it wouldn't guarantee long-term savings. And they said that if there's a way to decrease the prices and still make a fair profit, DC Comics will take that way. But the price increase will only occur when we can no longer hold the line. So basically, option 1 seems to be their best choice. And he says the final word in defense of a fair profit: any company that does not make a fair profit will be able to improve its products or service. Any company that makes no profit will cease to exist. Thank you and good afternoon. So again, Dick's got a lot of points, valid points there. And I don't know how. Again, I don't know the ins and outs of the business, how much things cost. But I'm sure a lot of the same points he makes there could be applied now. And I'm going to end with talk about the last 2 ads. There's an ad for Masters Universe models. There's the Talon Fighter and the Tac Tank from He-Man. And then there's a ad for a Kool-Aid Man video game. Shows the Kool-Aid Man, oh yeah, busting through some with these little bursts of lidar with tongues. I guess it was his enemies, the thirst monsters or something. But anyways, that's the Sword of the Atom. I really enjoyed the book, the series. Again, I bought this later on, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good book. Fantastic, it's great art. I enjoyed that. And except for the minor few little quibbles, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So, what do you guys think? Let me know. Go ahead and send me an email to swordoftheatom@headspeaks.com. And we'll go from there. I can read your comments on the air, but go ahead and let me know. Anyways, that's it for this 4-issue miniseries. From here, Adam's next appearance was in Justice League of America 225 through 227. Before I continue with this, originally I always thought there was the Sword of the Atom miniseries, and then there was the 3 specials. I didn't realize he popped up in other places. So I just planned on reviewing the Sword of the Atom miniseries, the specials, and then going to Power of the Atom. I'm finding out now that, as I'm saying right now, he appeared in the Justice League America for 3 issues. He was in Supergirl number 20 in just a crowd shot. And then he was in the Sword of the Atom specials 1 and 2. And then he popped over in Crisis issues 5, 8, 9, and 10. And then back into the Sword of the Atom special number 3, which was his first post-Crisis appearance. And then from there, he went to the Power of the Atom series. So I think next time I'm gonna cover the Justice League of America, probably the entire miniseries, the 225 through 227, and then I'm gonna skip Supergirl 20 because it was just a crowd shot. He didn't do anything, and then I'll move on to the Sword of the Atom specials 1 and 2. So that's it for the Sword of the Atom, though, for this month. Go ahead and let me know what you guys think. And let's go ahead and move on.
On your mark, get set. We're riding on the internet.
The internet is really, really great.
For porn.
I got a fast connection so I don't have to wait.
For porn.
What? There's always some new site.
For porn.
I browse all day and night.
For porn.
It's like I'm surfing at the speed of light.
Internet porn, Roman orgy scenes. Internet porn, dominatrix queens. Internet porn, girl on girl on girl on girl on girl on guy on sheep.
You're going surfing on the internet.
Where is Head going?
This month I'm going to look at another podcast I listen to. This one's called Tell 'em Steve Dave. Tell 'em Steve Dave is a precursor to AMC's Comic Book Men. It stars friends of Kevin Smith, Walt Flanagan, and Brian Johnson, and also True TV's Impractical Joker, Brian Quinn, aka Q. The three of them sit around, and occasionally they're joined by friends of theirs, other employees of the Secret Stash. And they talk about events from the week, upcoming events going on. They play games occasionally. The show got started because apparently Brian Johnson was a bit suicidal, was down on himself and his life. And I believe it was Kevin Smith had talked him and Walt Flanagan into doing a podcast to give something Brian to look forward to. They didn't think it would go very long, so they agreed. They got Q in on it. And they started it up, and that's been, so several years ago. It's, I think they just passed episode 300 here recently. So, as I said, it was a precursor to Comic Book Men. The story goes, Kevin Smith says anyways, that he was looking for a show kind of like Pawn Stars and these reality, in quotes, TV shows, but based on something he likes, comic books. And so he was shopping around the idea. And they're like, well, we'd like to try it out. So he's like, well, let's find a comic book store, in Middletown, USA, and film there and see what the pilot looks like. And they were trying to find what comic shop to use. And so I believe it was one of the people on Kevin's staff's like, Kevin, don't you own a comic book shop? Don't you have friends working at a comic book store? Oh, yeah. And he's like, well, you guys are doing a podcast. Let's pull them in on it. And, unfortunately, Q is over on a different station, on a different network with Impractical Joker, so they couldn't use him. But, so that's kind of where this came from, since the two of them had a podcast together. He decided to use them in that store. And like I said, it's just basically Tell 'em Steve Dave is usually the three of them. They've got special episodes. They got the Overkill episodes, where they talk about the strange and the mysterious, maybe the supernatural. They've got Puck Nuts, where they talk about sports. They play games, 1, 2, 3. There's usually language involved. It's not meant for kids. So definitely listen to Tell 'em Steve Dave, wherever you get your podcasts. That's going to be it for this part. Let's move on.
Mail time.
The mail's here. Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
You've got mail.
And now we move on to Head's Mailbag. First up, we're going to start with Twitter. Over on Twitter, these are people that liked and reliked and shared and reshared and retweeted and retweeted whatever things regarding Head Speaks and the Headcast Network. Again, I've got 2 feeds over on Twitter. I've got, not feeds, but Twitter accounts. I've got the Headcast Network and the G.I. Joe Real American Headcast. When people post on Twitter regarding specific episodes or specific shows, I try to pet them with that. The ones if I get in a hurry or if I just can't figure out what show they're referring to, it all goes on this one. So anyways, there's Alan Middleton, Diablo Frank, FKA Jason, Learning Not to Swear, who is a new follower, Martin Gray, Michael Bailey, Michael Dobb, aka Michael A. Wagner, Silver and Gold, Trekker Talk, Two True Freaks, Warlord Worlds, and Weird Science DC. And then over on Facebook, we have Gene Hendricks, Grant Richter, Pat Simpson, Roger Preeb, Ryan Daly, The Irredeemable Shag, the Silver and Gold Podcast, the Longbox Crusade, the Secret Origins Podcast, Tim Wallace, and an actual real-life friend, Yolanda Lamas. And there was one comment over on Facebook From my buddy Pat Sampson. He said, great episode. I am enjoying the Sword of the Atom. Thanks for the pod pimp. Because the last episode I talked about Pat's Longbox Crusade podcast. And it was my pleasure, Pat. I'm enjoying that podcast. And again, as I may have said previously, Pat came to me, Ryan, a couple other guys about help when he wanted to start his own podcast. So I was glad to help him out. He was on our last episode of G.I. Joe or American Headcast. It wasn't the last episode, but it was the latest episode. Though it may seem like the last episode because it's been a month or so since I've done an episode. Just my own personal life and work and the kids and the wife working and everything. It's been a little crazy around here, but I'm going to get back on that here soon, as soon as I can. But anyways, there was no emails, no other comments. That's all I've got for you guys this month. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Join us next month, where I will probably be covering the Justice League of America issues that I mentioned. It was Justice League of America 225 through 227. I may cover all three of them in one issue, or one episode. We'll see. But anyways, that's it for this time. For my final song this week, I am going to play, Hickeys Around My Neck, from the group called Audio 2. This is a song from my teen years. I really enjoyed it. Audio 2 they only have one album from them. I don't think they had very many great songs, but they did have some good songs in my opinion. This was one of them. Top Billin', Gets Buggin', I Like You, a few others. Anyways, this is Hickeys Around My Neck by Audio 2. Again, it'll be up after I play the credits. So, hang tight, kids. Until next time, remember, Head has spoken. Thank you for listening to another fantastic episode of Head Speaks. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, let me know. Drop me an email to head@headspeaks.com or visit our home at head.headspeaks.com. You can also visit and talk with me on Facebook and Google+, both under Head Speaks. You can also send an MP3 file with your thoughts and I can play that on the air. And you can also get more of me on my other podcasts. Be sure to listen to Task Force X, where monthly I look at John Ossinger's Suicide Squad and Paul Kuppenberg's Checkmate comics from the 80s and early 90s. Also, over on G.I. Joe, A Real American Headcast, my podcasting friends Ryan Daly and Kyle Benning, along with myself, are looking at all of the G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero comics, and related titles from Marvel and IDW. All of my headcasts are available on iTunes and Stitcher, along with the respective blogs and my main page at headspeaks.com. All comments, thoughts, and opinions expressed on Head Speaks are owned wholly by the speaker of said comments and do not express the opinions of Head Speaks, unless, of course, I'm the one making the comments. Head Speaks, Task Force X, and G.I. Joe, A Real American Headcast, are all part of the Headcast family. So, join us next month, another wonderful episode of Head Speaks. Until then, I'll see you in the funny pages. Good night.
Hated hickeys all around my neck, but it was feeling pretty good, so what the heck? The hickey went on, and I went home. I tried to brush it off, then I used a comb. The comb didn't work, it got bigger and redder. Giz said, yo, milkman, you shouldn't have let her. But I did, Giz, and now I gotta get it off. I tried lotion, but it just got soft. The hours went on and on and on. Man, I wish the hickey was gone. but it wasn't. And my girl was coming over. I needed a plan to try to get over. So I called King of Chill. I said, what's up, man? Got a hickey on my neck. I need a plan. He said, yo, Milk, why don't you bust a turtleneck? I said, that's whack, but what the heck? I ran to my room, but I couldn't find one. Then like Star Trek, the search begun. I ran through my house from the bottom to the top. I got a bright idea. I'll ask Pop. I ran to Dad. I said, what's up, D? I need a turtleneck to cover this hickey. He said,
oh, son, that just won't work. You'll feel real hot and you'll look like a jerk.
I said, okay, then what's your advice? He said,
go into the freezer and get a piece of ice.
I said, a piece of ice to put on my neck? It sounds real cold, but what the heck? I went into the freezer and did what he said. I hope it would hurt or else I'd be dead. I put the ice on and I waited and waited. The hickey was gone. It faded, it faded. The time was then for my girl to appear. At the count of 3, what did I hear? 1, 2, 3. It was the bell, as you can tell. As I opened the door, my eyes did swell. As I saw something I thought I never would see. My girl chilling there with the great big hickey. I punched her in the mouth, her lip I did wreck. That's how I felt, so what the heck? What the heck?
Yo, Milkman, you shouldn't have let her.
Yo, Milk, why don't you bust a turtleneck? What the heck?
Oh, son, that just won't work. You'll feel real hot and you'll look like a jerk. Go into the freezer and get a piece of ice.